What did young enslavers learn at the feet of their parents? And how did they learn to be young enslavers? Well, for today's discussion, we are coming from the book The Price for Their Pound of Flesh by Dana Ramey Berry, and They Were Her Property, White Women as Slave Owners in the American South by Stephanie E. Jones Rogers. Let's get started. So let's start with the fact that enslavers had a tendency to give their children enslaved men, women, and children when they were young. They were given as gifts on special occasions like baptisms, birthdays, holidays, marriage, or just because the sun came up. Parents then offered crucial lessons on how to control enslaved people through their own words and deeds. And as young children, they watched their parents manage the enslaved people around them, and they observed different models of slave mastery, and through a process of trial and error, developed styles of their own. White children learned how to be little mistresses and masters through an instructional process that spanned their childhood and adolescence. And over the course of their formative years, they practiced techniques of slave discipline and management. They made mistakes and learned from them, modified their behavior to meet various conditions, and ultimately decide what kind of slave owners they wanted to become. White parents taught their children about slavery and clearly explained the differences between the enslaver and the enslaved. And some children learned about slavery from bedtime stories and books like the one called The Child's Book on Slavery, or the book called Slavery Made Plain, which sought to educate children about an institution that might seem incomprehensible to a young mind. The book opens with the following explanation. The design of this little book is to show the truth in regard to slavery and to give important information concerning it to all readers who do not already know it well. The book explained the business of slavery to those who didn't know a lot about it, and it drew from the story of Moses and the concepts of liberty and freedom, and it evoked the American Revolution. There was a chapter called What is a Slave, where the children learned that to be a slave is to be held and treated as a piece of property, and that as property, they were sometimes kept by enslavers until they died, or sometimes the enslaver sells them, or perhaps gives them away to his children. Slave-owning parents forced enslaved adults and children to use the terms master and mistress when referring to their children from the moment their infants were born. And the objective was simple. Slave owners wanted the enslaved to recognize the power that white children had over them, even at birth. And if the enslaved person did not use master or mistress when referring to a baby, a 3-year-old, a 10-year-old, they were punished accordingly. There are stories from enslaved people who were whipped for not referring to their 3-year-old charge as mistress or master. By the age of 10, black and white, enslaved and enslaver, these children knew that their lives were on very different trajectories.